Hey, in this video I want to introduce you to CSS positioning. By default, all properties that you create with HTML are static. So in this video I want to show you what happens when you make a position relative, absolute, fixed, and inherit. I also want to touch on z-index and how that works as well in terms of in relation to positioning. So let's get started. So this is in CodePen. This is a brand new CodePen. We won't be needing the JavaScript panel, just the HTML. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a div with a class of container. Let me open this up just a little bit here. And let's close that. Perfect. Okay, and make sure that we save this as positioning. We'll position for now. Okay, so in our container, let's say we want to include a div class, let's say just a random box. Okay, nothing in it. In fact, what I'll probably end up doing is put this on the same row there. So let's go and target that box. Let's give it a fixed width of 100 pixels and a height of also 100 pixels. And just so we can see it, we'll give it a background color of red. There it is right there. So this is sitting inside the container class here. So let's go ahead and target that container. And just so you guys can see the outline, I'm just going to give it a border blue. And there it is. It's a block level item here. So let's also give this a fixed width of 500 pixels and also a height of 500 pixels. Perfect. And I'm just going to give it a padding all the way around of 15 pixels. We'll keep things in pixels for now just for the demonstration purposes. So here we have this red box floating inside this container. It's being offset because we put this padding around the container, which is in blue. So we're good to go there. So if we introduce, let's say, another box, div class, we'll call this box2. Close that div. Now box2 will also have these same properties, just so they're stacked at the bottom, but what I'm going to do is target box2 and give it a background color of green, just so you can see the differences. So there's that green color. So if we wanted to have this green box here overlapping this and maybe even offset some more, the only way you could do that is with absolute positioning. So if you were to, for example, set absolute positioning on position absolute, and we give it top 0, left 0. And what you're going to see, this is relative to the document itself, the HTML document, not the blue document. So that's what we want to do, is see this blue container, how this overlaps that blue container. So in order to have this be relative to the blue container, which is what we want, we need to go back to this container class here and apply position relative. So in other words, everything that's, you can see this gets shifted inside the container, so it's no longer outside the container. So any items that's the child of container and you give it a position absolute, it'll be relative to this container here, which is a good way to control in terms of the spacing and the offset. So for instance, if you wanted to change where this was, 25 pixels, left 25 pixels, you'll see that's relative to that container. So as soon as they take this off, you'll see how positioning now changes. You see how it kind of overlaps it. So keep that in mind. So this is now relative to the container. Perfect. So if you wanted to have that, let's say you wanted to have this red box overlap this green box, for instance. So what would you do in that scenario? So let me go and change this just to, let's say, 45, just so it's offset some more. So let's say we want to have this red box. So you would use the z-index. However, so let's say, for instance, you put z-index to 0 in box 2 because you want that green to be below the red, and you set z-index to, let's say, 10 because you want it to be above. Nothing works. It doesn't work. So the reason for that is because by default, this container, this HTML container, is position static. So none of these, the z-index won't work with it. So what you need to do is just switch it to position relative. And all of a sudden it works. Now, keep in mind, this box and the box and box 2, they're both siblings. So even though we have position relative here, this is not relative to the box container. Box 2 is not relative to the box class. It's relative to the container because that's what we did up here. So keep that in mind. Okay, and so the other one we want to cover is position fixed. Now position fixed doesn't care about position relative, has nothing to do with it. So for instance, let's go ahead and make box 2 position fixed. Now keep in mind the z-index, let's see here. Red is on top. Perfect. So keep in mind the z-index will still be in effect. So if I change this to 25, you'll see that it goes over. So this is the green box top. So it doesn't look much different, but the difference is here. You'll see that first of all, this is no longer, box 2 is no longer relative to the container because it doesn't care about that. It's relative to the document. And so just so you can see that it is in fact fixed, I'm going to change this height over here just for demonstration purposes, 1500 pixels high. That way this container can scroll. So as I scroll, you see that green box is now fixed into that position. So the fixed position, so it's from the top of the document, 45 pixels down, and from the left of the document, it's 45 pixels from the left here. And because it's fixed, it'll just stay in place. It doesn't care about position relative on its parent container, so that won't affect it either. And that's it. So z-index is the only way to work with z-index is if you have position relative, position absolute, or position fixed. And then that way you can determine which item is on top of which item. And basically it's dictated by the z-index number, so the smaller number will be below the larger number, or in other words, the larger number will be on top of the smaller number. And the last item I want to show you is position inherit and how that would work in our scenario here. So, but the way inherit works, the same property from its parent. So the child, whatever you give it here in terms of the CSS property, it'll take it from its parent. So what do I mean by that? So for instance, let's say we have this box here. Let's say we did not apply this position relative here. So let's get rid of that. So remember, we want that red box to overlap the green box. So let's give this a 0. And this is now z-index 10. So the red box should overlap the green box, but it doesn't because we don't have a positioning. So because the box, this actual box here, I'm going to actually remove this from here because we'll have some, actually, that's actually okay. So we can actually keep it to both just for this demonstration. So what we want to do now is do position and inherit. And so what that'll do is it'll take its parent, whatever the parent was. So the container is now the parent container is position relative. So now if we do position inherit, this inherit is equal to relative. So what that means is that this position fixed is just overriding this inherit property, which we declared up here.